And Detective Sergeant Sullivan is his supervisor.
He's both of our supervisors, yes, sir.
Okay, and he's a white male, approximately in his 40s.
Yes.
I won't take a stab at his height.
Okay.
But yet, you're the one who was called in to give the overall scheme of the investigation for this case, right?
No, overall.
I was the first member of the squad called to the stand, yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you weren't even working the night of this incident.
No, sir.
Okay. And then you began, I guess one of the first tasks that you discussed was that you began doing a canvas for cameras.
Yes, sir.
Okay. When you did your canvas, did you go to the W and confiscate any cameras from the W?
I did not know, sir.
Okay. And you testified to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury about this prior homicide and some other cameras. You recall that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that, after that incident, it's your testimony that when you went for your canvas, there were no cameras there at the time.
If you're referring to the first incident, sir, when I say that...
I'm referring to this case.
Okay.
When you went looking for the canvas, there were no cameras, according to you, there at that time.
Well, when you say there, I don't know what you're referring to.
The parking lot next to the Tufts garage.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you didn't confiscate anything from the W.
No, sir.
Okay. And then you're aware of premises liabilities as it relates to if a crime happens at a location, that sometimes the owners of that location might be liable for lack of security or cameras?
I mean, I'm aware that it's not what I do, but I am aware that that's happened, sure.
And that's why these private places have cameras, because they want to make sure they're not held liable.
Sustained.
If you know.
Sustained.
Sir, you testified that initially there were some cameras that were requested of Cure, and you didn't have enough time, correct? You didn't have enough of the time for
I understand what you're asking. We requested the cameras for the night of the incident, and it was noticed that we were missing about 2 hours.
Okay. And when you notice you're missing 2 hours, that's important to you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you immediately acted on it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So your representations to the ladies and gentlemen of this jury is that not only did you request all of the cameras, both inside and out, right?
Yes, sir.
You then went back the following day and requested more cameras.
I don't know that one, it was the following day. I think it took a couple days to get the cameras, but when I became aware, I notified Sergeant Detective Sullivan, who had been dealing with them, that we don't have everything that we should have.
Okay. And then you testified to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury that you requested from 10 p.m., because that's the time you know they open.
Yes, sir.
All the way on to the rest of the night.
Yes, I believe the back-ended time was 3 or 3:30, which is obviously well after it closes. I wasn't so much concerned with the time after it had closed. It was that time when it opened to midnight.
Okay, and that's the most important time, of course.
I wouldn't say it's the most important time. It's a time.
Well, if you don't have the cameras from when they open, that's a problem in the investigation. You need that.
Yes, sir.
In fact, that's why you went and asked for them.
Yes, sir.
Okay. But yet today you testified to the ladies and gentlemen of this jury that you got the cameras all the way from 10 p.m. to closing and a little bit thereafter, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you.
I'm sorry, no, and just for clarity, if you said 10 a.m.?
10 p.m.
Okay.
10 p.m.
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And I'm going to show you what's been marked Exhibit 58. It's previously admitted into evidence.
Yes, sir.
And this is the second request for that specific, for those cameras that you didn't get initially. Okay. This is the entrance camera.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to pick camera 5, which is the first one of the evening that you got. Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what time it says there?
10:50.
10:50 is not 10 p.m., correct?
No, sir.
Then the files that follow are after. I'm going to just show you so you can see. 11:20. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
Now I'm going to go back to the ID cam and go to the very first one. What time do you see that, sir?
It says 11.
That's not 10 p.m., correct?
No, sir.
That's not as you represented to this jury, correct?
I represented what I believe I had asked for. I believe it opens at 10 and we had asked for.
Okay. You represented that you got cameras from 10 p.m. on, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now let's go to the next camera. Camera 7. What time does that say, sir?
It says 11, sir.
So that's not 10 p.m.
That's correct.
Then we go to the lobby. And what time does that say, sir?
It says 11.
We're going to go to lobby 2. What time does that say, sir?
It says 11.
Tremont Street. What time does that say, sir?
10:50.
That's not 10 p.m., correct?
That's correct.
Tremont Street 2. What time does that say, sir?
10:50, sir.
And Wilbur. What time does that say, sir?
10:45.
Okay. None of those cameras that I showed you when you went back say anything about 10 o'clock.
That's correct.
Okay. So when you mentioned to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury that you got the cameras from 10 p.m. on, that was incorrect.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you're not the person who made the request to Club Cure, correct?
Correct.
That would be Sergeant Talbot.
The initial request was Sergeant Detective Talbot. Yes, sir.
Okay. He was the one, he was basically the point man to get the club video from Cure.
Yes, sir.
Now, when you obtain video, or let me rephrase that, when you obtain any information or any physical evidence, you're supposed to then begin a chain of custody, correct?
Yes, sir.
And this is so you can represent to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury as to when exactly you got that evidence, right?
Sustained in that form. Rephrase.
And that is so you can document when you exactly received that evidence.
It can be, yes, sir.
And not only when you received it, but what you actually received, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you or are you aware of any chain of custody for these specific videos?
I didn't write any reports relative to it, sir. I'm not sure about Sergeant Detective Sullivan. I believe there may be an email about it. Here's what we're requesting. And that Sergeant Detective Talbot, directed two other detectives to drop it off once it had been picked up.
An email is not proper chain of custody documents, is it, sir?
I mean, as you've stated, it's documentation, so you may not call it proper or appropriate, but your premise was that the time that you ask for and get it is noted. An email would certainly do that.
Okay. So all you can testify to as to when and what you received, not only the first request, but the second request, is an email.
No, sir. What I can testify to is that it was asked for and received. And you're correct. I was incorrect about the time of being 10. I've been to these clubs in a long time. I know it was opening. This may actually open at 11, and I apologize for that. But I didn't have a direct role in that. My role was somewhat different, which I explained earlier.
I understand, but you still testified today before the ladies and gentlemen of the jury about Cure and the canvas of videos and everything like that, correct?
Well, what I testified to this jury were things that I did. So I did do a canvas for video. I did receive the Cure video from someone else in my squad, though I was not the one who requested it, and that's what I represented to them.
Have you ever seen, other than this email. Well, let me break it down, actually. This email, does it refer to the first request or the second request?
Sir, I don't know. I know that was how, it was
me
either
ask you.
emails or, I'm sorry, if
Let
I
me
can
ask you the
answer.
questions. Okay, so you don't know. So this email, does it reference how much time of the video you got?
Sir, again, I didn't make
If
the
you know.
request. I don't know.
Okay. Does this email reference whether you got both the inside and the outside cameras?
I don't know, sir.
Okay. All right, so you really don't know anything about the cameras at Cure.
Sustained in that form.
I'll withdraw the question. Now, you mentioned that you had only observed video outside of Cure. Is that correct?
I don't know what you're referring to.
The video that you have of Cure, it's only of the outside and the lobby area.
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay. But at this time, you know this. You know that 2 out of the 3 men in the backseat of that car fled the scene.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then you know that they didn't stay to speak to police.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then you testified that you were looking for the movement of the victims. Do you remember that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You're aware that Rashidi Sanchez claims that he stayed at the scene?
No, over. If you know that to be the case, you may answer.
I believe he said he left, took a cab, I think, to his girlfriend, so he did not stay in the scene.
Were you ever made aware that he was at the scene covered in blood and a police officer asked him for his name?
Later, yes.
Okay. And then you were made aware that after being asked his name, he fled?
Later, yes. Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you try to track down the police officer who asked him for his name?
No.
Okay. So that's one thing of tracking the victim's movements that you didn't do.
When I was referring to tracking the victim's movements, it's up until the shots are fired into the car. So that was done. Where he went after, he came in the next day and told us where he went, told us why he went there.
Okay. My question to you, sir, is did you verify what happened when Mr. Sanchez says he was covered in blood at the crime scene and a police officer came up to him and asked him his name? Did you verify that with any of the officers? Did you go around asking every officer at the scene, hey, did you see this large black male covered in blood of Cape Verdean descent?
No, sir.
Okay. So out of the 22 officers who were there that night, you never stopped and did that?
I did not know.
That's something you could have done, but you didn't.
Certainly.
Okay. Now, he then tells you that he tried to get into a cab.
Yes.
Okay. But after being so covered in blood that the cab driver didn't want to give him a ride.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you make any inquiries to try and find that taxi driver?
No, sir.
Okay. He then tells you that he went to the ATM and took out money. Is that correct?
I believe so. I don't have an absolute memory of that part, but I'm sure if he was taking a cab, he needed money. Yes.
Did you go and get his bank records to try and see if he in fact did withdraw money that night?
No, sir.
Okay. You then, he then says that he got a taxi, another taxi, and that taxi gave him a ride somewhere.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you go and try and find what taxi eventually took him home?
No, sir.
Okay. He tells you then that he doesn't have a cell phone, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you go and try to verify if there were any cell phones in his name?
No, sir.
He then tells you he burned his clothes. Do you
Yes.
recall that?
Yes, sir.
Did you go to his house and check out the bonfire?
No, sir.
Did you go and see if there was any location where he could burn his clothes?
No.
Did you even go to his apartment to see if that's possible? Or likely, I should say.
Is what likely?
That he could burn his clothes at home.
You just described he could have burned them anywhere, and I'm telling you, no, we did not go look,
So
nor in
what-
his apartment.
So when you say he could have burned them anywhere, you didn't follow up and ask him exactly where did you burn your clothes?
Again, you said he could have burned them anywhere, and the answer to your question now is no. I did not ask him that.
Okay, so you never followed up to see where and when he burned his clothes?
I did not.
And in what way?
I did not.
Okay. Then you know that. Let me before I forget this because I'm moving further ahead. Did you verify that none of the individuals in the BMW left Club Cure at any point in time?
They left at closing.
At closing, correct.
Yes, sir.
But before walking in and leaving at 2 when the place closed, they never left Club Cure.
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay. And when you later spoke to Alexander Bradley, he told you that the individuals from Cape Verde left that club and went across the street to another club.
Objection is sustained.
Were you informed by Alexander Bradley that the gentleman from Cape Verde left Club Cure at some point in time?
No, on second thought, the objection is overruled, but this is not offered for the truth of anything that Bradley may have said. This is offered only for your consideration in terms of the police investigation and what efforts the police undertook during their investigation. You may answer that question, sir.
I'm sorry, sir. I'm not trying to be. Could you just repeat the back end of the question, please?
That's all right, sir. Anytime you don't understand my question, I'm more than happy to repeat it, okay?
Thank you very much.
All right. Now, when you got information from Bradley
Yes, sir.
that said that the gentlemen from Cape Verde who were in the BMW, at one point they left Cure and went to another bar across the street, did you get that information?
I don't believe he referenced all 5, but he did make some reference to that he and Mr. Hernandez were in another club and observed. I want to say he said 2, I'm not quite sure, but at least 2 of the group that they had seen across the street there.
And one of the 2 included Mr. De Abreu, correct?
I believe he referenced he didn't know the name, but I think he said the one with braids.
Right. And that would be Mr. De Abreu.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you check the video from Cure, the exit video, the door, and the lobby, to see if Mr. De Abreu ever left that club prior to closing?
I believe it. I don't believe he left.
Okay. And that's the information that you have.
Yes, sir. I don't believe he left.
And that statement by Alexander Bradley is easily verifiable to you.
Objection.
No, you may answer if that's the case.
I guess I don't understand what you mean by easily verifiable.
Well, I mean that you could sit there and watch video and see if the gentleman ever left the club.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you could also question the 3 gentlemen that were in the back seat and ask them if they ever left the club.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you in fact do that?
Yes, sir.
And they all said no.
That's correct.
Just like they all said they had no interactions that were negative that night.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Nor did they see any negative interactions.
Correct.
Now, I want to focus on Mr. Lopez. Mr. Lopez also fled the scene, correct?
Mr. Lopes. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, Mr. Lopes, as you refer to him, didn't stay at the crime scene.
No, sir.
He took off.
He did.
Okay. Did you inquire as to how he got home?
I believe we did. I know we talked to him the next day when he came in with Mr. Sanchez.
Okay. When you spoke, now, that's another thing. Mr. Sanchez and Mr. Lopes came in together,
Yes, sir.
and you were aware that they communicated prior to coming to the police station.
Yes, sir.
And they also exchanged stories, correct? They talked about what happened?
I would assume they did. Yes, sir.
They told you they talked about what happened,
Yes, sir.
okay? And then they came in and gave statements, and that's when you separated them.
Not in that order. They came in together, they were separated, and they were interviewed.
And the reason you separate potential witnesses is so they don't compare they don't compare notes and try to tell the same story, right?
That's one reason, yes.
Okay. But they had already done that before they got to you.
They may have, yes.
Okay. And when Mr. Lopes got in and talked to you, when did you go and get his clothing from that evening?
I didn't.
Okay. Do you know if any other officers went and got his clothing?
I know that that did not happen.
Okay. So you don't know what type of blood pattern evidence might be on Mr. Lopes' clothing from that evening?
I do not.
You don't know if there's any gunshot residue that could be found on Mr. Lopes' clothing as well?
I do not.
And you made no efforts to track the movement of the victims, as you put it, after the incident?
After the incident, no, sir.
Okay. In fact, when you talked about your canvas to the... I apologize, Your Honor. I didn't ask for permission to approach. May I?
Certainly.
When you talked about your canvas here, you're aware that the incident occurred here on the corner of Shamet and Harold Street, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you're also made aware that the SUV then made a left and went this way, correct? On Harold Street.
I am now.
Okay. Because you weren't working that night.
No. In these investigations, we receive a lot of information. Some of it turns out to be absolutely accurate because of people's perceptions. Some of it is not. So while people say that at first blush or in the moment that I believe the car took a left, they could be incorrect, which is why we extended it beyond that intersection.
But you never got cameras beyond that intersection, did you, sir?
No, sir.
Okay. So you can't track which direction the shooting car went in because you never got the camera.
We didn't locate any cameras. I don't believe they exist.
Now, you testified that that was the full extent of your canvas. Is it your testimony that...
I thought I said, and correct me if I'm wrong, I thought I said it went a little beyond that intersection, so I don't think I stopped right at Shamet and Harold.
I don't believe you did, but that's okay.
All right, well, if I did testify, then, sir, you're absolutely correct, but it did extend somewhat beyond that, and no cameras were located.
Okay, so it's your testimony that there are 0 cameras going in this direction or in that direction?
In 2012? Yes.
None?
Not that I'm aware of, sir, no.
What about straight down Shaman?
I believe there is one. It's on a private building that shows the sidewalk outside that building. In the city of Boston, if you were to keep extrapolating out in any direction, I'm sure there are other cameras.
Okay, so you said that you did there is one building, one camera with sidewalk.
I'm saying I believe there is one as you go down Shamet towards what we would consider the south end. I believe on the left-hand side there are some cameras right there that I believe show the sidewalk. You may be able to see tires in the street, but I don't believe it shows. There are no street cams. There's no corner cameras.
Now, you don't know what direction Mr. Lopes or Mr. Sanchez ran in, right?
No, sir, I don't.
And it's possible they were running in the sidewalk.
That is certainly possible.
Okay. And you don't know what they had in their hands while they were running, do you?
I do not.
Okay. And you don't know if they took anything with them from the car?
I don't.
Okay. And did you confiscate that camera with the sidewalk?
If it's the one I'm thinking of at 100 Shaman, I believe we did get the footage from it. If it's something else I'm thinking of, then the answer is no, sir.
Okay. Now, you're aware then that a be on the lookout was listed for the silver SUV the evening of the incident, correct?
When you say beyond the look, are you talking about a radio broadcast?
Correct.
It would have been put out over the radio, yes.
Okay. And you're aware of the fact that the passenger in the vehicle was described as a possible female?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you make any attempts, either that evening, well, you didn't work that evening, the following day, and any time thereafter for the next 5 years, any attempts to try and locate who that either male with long hair or female was?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And that would include speaking with Mr. Bradley?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, You mentioned I want to go back and cue up the video of what you had shown the jury earlier. Okay, earlier you testified to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury as to who was potentially driving at this time, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now the time that this is taken is at what time, sir?
It's a little hard for me to see on this, but it says, I want to say it says 1:17 and 26 seconds.
Okay. Now, you're aware, sir, that the shooting took place at right around 2:30 a.m., correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is almost an hour and 15, 20 minutes after.
Before.
Before.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you're also made aware that this car was parked later on.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you're not making any representations to this jury that at the time of the shooting, Aaron Hernandez was driving.
Not that I had any of this sort of evidence of a video or anything like that. No, sir.
Okay, in fact, anything after this, the only evidence that you have that potentially says Aaron Hernandez was in the car is the statements by Mr. Bradley.
Sustained in that form.
Okay. You don't have any more cameras that show Aaron Hernandez in that car after this time, correct?
No, sir.
Okay. And you don't have any eyewitnesses except Mr. Bradley that would say that Mr. Hernandez was ever in that car after that time, correct?
It's sustained.
Are you aware of any other information by other officers that were given to you of any evidence that says Mr. Hernandez was in the car at that time?
You want to be seen on that, Mr. Baez?
Actually, no, what's your other question?
All right, question withdrawn.
All right. Now, you're made aware of Mr. Brian Kwan's testimony, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. His statements to you were that he saw an African-American male driving, correct?
I believe so. Yeah. They weren't directly to me, but I am aware of what he said, sir. Yes.
Okay. And that a potential female was in the passenger side, or someone with long cornrows?
Long braids, yes.
Braids, okay. You're also made aware of Mr. Friere. Well, let me strike that. You're also aware of Warren McMasters, a street sweeper,
Yes, sir.
and you're aware of the statements he made.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You're also aware of a Brian McCann, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. He gave you information that Mr. Hernandez was outside of a...
I'll see you at sidebar.
He was outside of 215.
Okay. Did you check and scan the cameras for any black SUV?
I'm not even aware of where this supposedly would have occurred, sir. So the answer for me is no.
Did you receive information that approximately at 2:28 a.m. Mr. Hernandez was spotted outside the W Hotel?
I have heard that, yes, sir.
Okay. Did you then get any do any follow up with the W Hotel to verify that?
At the point that I became aware of that, there wouldn't have been video from that incident. It was significantly later, sir.
Now let's discuss the investigation. And you testified during your direct examination that in 2013 you then began to investigate the whereabouts of Aaron Hernandez that evening.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
May I approach your office?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry? You want to make this be marked?
As a chalk, I've already shown it to Mr. Hank.
No objection.
Just for identification only.
All right. Received. Is that DD?
Yes, Your Honor.
I'm showing you what's marked as Defense Exhibit DD. I'm going to question you a little bit about this in a second, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, before I do so, you then began to look into Mr. Hernandez on the 19th of June, is it?
The 18th to the 19th, sir.
Okay. And then, shortly thereafter, you became aware of the identity of Alexander Sherrod Bradley, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you became aware of this because investigators then contacted Bristol detectives, correct?
I believe, I'm sorry, I was Bristol, Connecticut. Yes, sir.
Okay. And when you contacted Bristol, Connecticut, all you needed to do was show them the photo of Sherrod Bradley from this garage, correct?
I believe that there was one photo shown to one of the detectives down there who immediately knew who he was.
He immediately knew who he was.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it's because
Sustained.
he didn't know who he was because they were in the same bowling league, right?
Sustained in that form.
There were inquiries made, and the information you received was that Alexander Bradley had a history of narcotics and firearms, correct, sir?
Sustained.
May we approach on this
Yeah.
issue?
clarify is reframe the question.
Yes, sir. Detective, you received information that Alexander Sherrod Bradley was heavily involved in drug activity.
Objection heavily.
Was involved in drug activity. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you had this individual, and at that time, did you attempt to subpoena his phone records?
I did not know.
Okay. Do you know of any other detectives who attempted to subpoena his phone records?
I believe we have some phone records for him. Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm talking about the night of the incident, not further after.
As I sit here, I know I didn't do it. I know we have a number of phone records for Mr. Bradley, so I can't say it was or wasn't done, sir.
Okay. So as far as you're aware, you can't represent to this jury that of the evening of this incident, you did not get any phone records from Alexander Bradley.
I can't represent it to this jury one way or another. I know I didn't subpoena it, and I know we have a number of records for Mr. Bradley. I don't know if they encompass that night is what I'm trying to tell you.
Well, we're here. Everybody's here for this for what happened July 16th, correct? 2012?
Well, and days after, but yes, sir.
Okay. Now, having his phone records and his phone information might allow you to see who he communicated with and whom he did not, correct?
Yes, sir.
Possible text messages back and forth.
Yes, sir.
Other information, maybe photos or videos.
Yes, sir.
Okay. In addition to that, it might assist you in tracking the movements of Alexander Bradley.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that would be critical information in an investigation. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you've already testified that you didn't get any of the information from Mr. Sanchez of his phone records, right?
He represented that he didn't have a phone, so no.
And you represented that you didn't even do anything to follow up or verify that, right?
I don't know what I could have done, sir, other than maybe subpoena every cellular phone company that is available. But no, he did not have a phone. No one represented that he did have a cell phone at that time. There were only, I believe, in the car, 2 people that had cell phones. And
Okay, let's take that. Let's break that down for a second. You were able to obtain Mr. Frier's phone.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury when you went to verify whether Rashidi Sanchez's name or information was on that contact list.
It would have been when we did a forensic dump of the phone.
Okay. When did you specifically look at Mr. Frier's phone and see if there was anything that referenced Mr. Sanchez?
I wasn't tasked with that. I know a forensic examination was done. I know that, and again, all phones are different. I'm not sure to the extent that Mr.
Now,
Frier had a contact list, but I
You're
know that his
aware-
phone was dumped.
you're aware that an extraction was done, correct?
Yes, sir.
You're not aware of anybody who actually went through the records and verified anything, right? There's a difference.
There is a difference. You're absolutely correct. I
Okay.
know that I did not do it.
And you're not aware of anyone who has.
Someone in my squad would have, but again, sir, what I'm saying to you is I didn't.
I agree someone in your squad should have.
Objection.
Okay? And you would you agree that someone in your squad should have?
I'm saying someone in my squad did.
Okay? And you saw a report or a record of that. Is that what you're going to represent to this jury?
I'm going to represent that it was done after the extraction. There would have been a report generated by Sergeant Detective Kevin Witherspoon, who would have done the extraction. That would have been given to someone in the squad who would have gone through it.
But this mystery someone is, you have no idea.
Sustained as to the phrasing.
Do you know who this person is?
Sergeant Detective Sullivan or Detective McIsaac?
That's 2 people.
You asked me if I knew who it was. It's one of those 2.
Okay.
Both members of my squad, then and now.
You're just assuming that, aren't you, sir?
No, I know for a fact they're both members of my squad, then and now.
And they've done that.
Done what?
Went and verified his records and looked at them and bounced them off to see if there was any information relating to Rashidi Sanchez.
Overruled.
I've known them a long time. I know they did it.
Okay? You just know.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, let's take Mr. De Abreu.
Yes, sir.
Are you aware of whether an extraction was done on Mr. De Abreu's phone?
I believe one was attempted early on, and I want to say that there was a problem with the technology at the time, but one was done later.
Okay. And are you aware that all that was done from his phone was the photographs were taken out?
I believe that all the photographs, believe that's all that they could get out of his phone. It doesn't mean there was anything else in the phone. It was done.
I'm not
and
asking
that's
you
what
that,
they
so
got.
please limit your responses to my questions.
You asked me if this was done, and then you phrase it as the only thing we did was take these photos. In answer to your question, what I'm saying is, when this was done, the only thing that we were able to extract from the phone was the photos. It wasn't that there was other information there that we chose not to get. The only thing in there that they were able to get, period, were these photos.
I'll ask my question succinctly. The only thing that you got from Mr. D'Abreu's phone was his photos.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, Mr. Lopes then actually voluntarily came in and gave you his phone.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You didn't go asking for it. He had to come to you and give you his phone.
No, sir.
Okay. Are you aware of when he came in for his second interview?
I want to say maybe July 25th.
Okay.
Of
And on
2012?
that date, he brought his phone.
Yes, sir.
And on that date, he suggested to you that you take his phone.
No, sir.
Okay. This was your idea, is what you're going to testify to?
He didn't suggest that as if this was an investigative avenue we wouldn't have gone down. He simply volunteered it and may have phrased that you should take my phone. The fact is we were going to anyway.
They beat you to the punch.
He was being actually cooperative and friendly.
Okay. Now, you're aware, you've spoken to, or your squad has spoken to Mr. Lopes numerous times.
Yes, sir. A number of times.
As recently as when?
I would say as recently as maybe in the last 6 months, sir.
Okay. You haven't spoken to him even more recent than that?
It may have been. It wasn't beyond, like this year, last year, something like that. It was recent that someone spoke to him, yes.
He hasn't fled the country or gone anywhere, right?
Objection.
No, overruled.
May we approach, Your Honor?
Yeah.
And in fact, one of those people included Alexander Bradley.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Alexander Bradley also informed you subsequent to this incident, he had also driven that car.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, I want to direct your attention, sir, to some of your notes, your investigative notes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. During the course of your investigation, you received information from a fellow officer that Safiro Furtado was involved in drug dealing in Cape Verde. Is that correct?
I was made aware that there were rumors to that effect, yes.
Okay. And do you know the name of this officer who gave you this information?
I don't remember the officer who told me that, no.
Okay. So you have one of the individuals in the car that you're getting information that he was possibly involved in drug dealing in his native country, for which he had just arrived 5 months ago. And you didn't even take down the name of the officer who told you.
No, what I'm saying is at the time, I certainly remembered who had told me that. If I had developed something based on that rumor, I could have gone back to them. As I sit here now, I simply don't remember who passed that along.
And that's why you take notes, right?
No, at the time, I didn't need to take the note because I just spoke on them and remembered it. But as we investigated it and found nothing, there was simply no reason to go back to him. Now that you're asking me 5 years later, I suppose you're right, sir. Had I written it down back then you and I wouldn't have to have this conversation, and the fact is I didn't.
Right. It's the whole purpose of taking notes is so you can remember something later on.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And when you took these notes, all you put down is that Safiro Furtado was involved in drug dealing in Cape Verde.
With a question mark.
With a question mark, possible conflict.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now you know now, or you knew then, that Safiro Furtado had only been in this country for 5 months.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this was possible recent activity involving Safiro Furtado.
Well, I mean, he'd been here about anywhere from 3 to 5 months. So any drug dealing in Cape Verde would have preceded that. And the conflict, whether it had to do with that drug dealing or something else, maybe it was Cape Verde, maybe it was here. The fact is, when we looked into it, we couldn't find any evidence of any of it.
Now, your notes don't say maybe Cape Verde, maybe here. Your notes specifically say in Cape Verde.
Right. It says specifically in Cape Verde, which is not here.
Okay. And you know he had just gotten here 5 months earlier.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you know that some of the individuals in this car fled immediately after the shooting.
Yes, sir.
And you know that some of the individuals destroyed evidence after leaving the shooting.
I don't know what you say when you're saying evidence, but
Burning your clothes, that's destroying evidence. Wouldn't you agree, sir?
I don't know what it's evidence of, sir, but only one individual did that, not both.
Now, you told this jury that you would have confiscated those clothes had they been available, correct?
I don't believe I did say that.
Well, I'll ask you now. Would you not have confiscated those clothes if they were available?
It depends.
Sir,
If there was nothing on the clothes, there was no indication of anything, then the answer is no, I would not. If there was something, then yes, I would. The fact is I never saw the clothes, so I don't know.
you don't make that call, do you, sir?
Make what call?
If you ask for clothes of an individual, that requires further testing, does it not?
It depends what I'm looking for. That's a
Okay.
very broad question.
Right. Okay, well, I'll get more specific. If an individual is wearing clothes, there's potential blood pattern analysis that could be done on those clothing, correct?
That is certainly possible.
Okay. Now, you don't know because you never saw Mr. Sanchez's clothes.
That's correct.
Okay. You don't know, well, Mr. Sanchez did inform you they were covered in blood.
He informed someone, but yes, I'm aware of that.
Okay, so you're aware now that those clothes were relevant evidence.
And by the time I became aware of that, evidently they were destroyed, so there was nothing to see.
My question to you, sir, is you're aware now that was relevant evidence.
No, what I'm aware of is by the time we became aware of it, there was no evidence left, relevant or not. At the time, if someone had seized his clothes, maybe it would have had some bearing on its case, but by the time we learned of it, those clothes were gone and unavailable.
I'll ask you the question again that you don't want to answer, and that is simply, you're aware, sir, you're aware now that those clothes were relevant evidence.
And again, I'm not going to say that they were relevant. I never saw them, sir. You can ask me that as many times as you like. I didn't see them. They may have been relevant, they may not have. The fact is I don't know because I never actually saw them.
And you never actually attempted to go and find them even after Mr. Sanchez claimed that they were burnt, correct?
Asked and answered 5 times.
Sustained.
That's another question, Judge.
Move on.
Now, sir, you're aware that of course, clothing could also have gunshot residue,
It could, yes, sir.
okay? And that would assist investigators in determining whether that individual fired a firearm.
No, sir.
Gunshot residue does not assist investigators in determining whether someone was possibly firing a firearm.
Typically, what gunshot residue on clothing will tell you is whether or not someone was in an area where a firearm was fired. I could be standing next to someone who fired a firearm. My clothes could have gunshot residue. It's not that specific that it says I did it. It just means at some point my clothes came in contact with those particles. If I was shot, the same could be true.
And if someone in that BMW fired a gun, that might assist investigators in determining that.
Objection.
Overruled.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you also have in your notes that someone was after Rashidi's, meaning Rashidi Sanchez, and Gerson, meaning Gerson Lopes, the two individuals that ran, right? And that may be involved with CVO.
Yes, sir.
Okay? Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what CVO means?
It's a local group of predominantly Cape Verdean males in the city.
What city is that, sir?
The city of Boston. I believe they actually have a presence here in Boston, and they may in Brockton and maybe as far down as New Bedford. CVO stands for Cape Verdean Outlaws.
Okay, and that's a gang, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In fact, you worked in a gang unit,
I did.
so you're well aware of the comings and goings of the Cape Verdean Outlaws.
By the time, this point, I'd been out of the gang unit so long, I would not say that. But back when I was working actively as a member of the gang unit, they were simply one group that we would monitor.
Okay, so now you know, or you're given information by another officer, correct?
Yes, sir.
And this officer tells you that someone may be after Rashidi Sanchez and Gerson Lopez because they're involved, and that person may be involved with the Cape Verdean Outlaws, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you write down the name of that officer who gave you that information?
I believe it's the same officer, but no. It may have been the same one, it may have been someone else, but the answer to your question, no, sir.
And you did absolutely no follow-up.
That's absolutely not true.
Okay. So you went back and spoke to that officer.
No, I actually spoke to a different officer of Cape Verdean descent who knew Daniel Abreu, and I spoke to him. He is now presently a member of our Youth Violence Strike Force. So I talked to him. He said, these rumors that are floating around are absolutely untrue. He was very familiar with Daniel and his family, somewhat familiar, not as familiar with Safiro, but absolutely familiar with Daniel, knew the type of person he was and the type of people that he hung out with, and said that that's absolutely not true.
And where's
through any
your
other
report?
search,
Let
we
me ask you
found
this.
no.
Hold on. Let the witness finish his answer, please.
And through any other search, we didn't find anything.
Where's your report that discusses that you spoke to another officer about Daniel de Abreu?
I didn't write a report about a negative that something did not in fact exist.
Well, we're not talking about a negative. We're talking about a discussion that you had with a Cape Verdean officer who told you that he knew Daniel de Abreu,
Yes,
correct?
correct.
And his family,
Yes,
okay? And this officer gave you all this information,
yes, sir.
okay? But yet you didn't find it important enough to even put in your notes,
I didn't need to.
okay? So you didn't put it in your notes, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you didn't write a report on it,
No, I did not.
okay? And that's talking about Daniel de Abreu, right?
Yes, sir.
That's not talking about Rashidi Sanchez.
No,
And that's not talking about Gerson Lopez.
no, sir.
Okay. And did you also observe the initial camera angles of when the gentleman from Cape Verde entered Club Cure?
If you're asking if I saw the, are you talking about inside or outside?
Outside.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you observe any activity from Mr. De Abreu when Alexander Bradley walked by him?
No.
Okay. If I can bring that up. I'm going to show you, sir. This is, for the record, 12:29 p.m. of the outside video cure as the line occurs. I'll pause it at relevant times for questioning. Do you see Daniel de Abreu turn to his left, sir?
Yes, sir.
And do you see entering into the camera view Mr. Hernandez and Mr. Bradley?
Yes, sir.
As Mr. Bradley walks by, please take note of Mr. De Abreu.
I am.
Do you see him now look towards his right
I do.
as Mr. Bradley is walking by?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you, now you couldn't check any information on phone records because you did not have Alexander Bradley's phone information on that evening, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you did not have Mr. De Abreu's information either from his phone.
Correct.
Okay, just one moment, Judge. Now, sir, I'd like you to take a look at Mr. De Abreu after this. Now, do you see I'd like to direct your attention to Mr. Bradley at this time. Do you see him lift his arm and point in the direction of Mr. De Abreu or towards Club Cure?
Yes.
You see him now turn and face the line?
Yes.
Okay. Judge, I have no further questions on this, but I would like to I have inquiry into another area that I think I need the court's guidance on.
Why not?
Whether they know a lot about the individuals it happened to or a little bit. And there's a ton of speculation. Well, maybe they did this, or maybe they were involved in that. And we hear a lot of that. And we do spend some time going through it. Sometimes it's true. Sometimes people are gang involved. And that is exactly why the incident occurred. Sometimes it is the exact opposite of that they're not, and it had nothing to do with it.
So would it be unusual in your homicide investigation such as this to get rumors like that from the community?
Rephrase.
Is this thing you've just described, this kind of street rumors that happen after, I believe you said, almost every homicide, is that unusual?
No.
And the street rumors, again, are they from a specified source that you can follow up with?
We have information they're carrying a gun for any number of reasons, including officer safety. That is put into a report and disseminated. If there is a feud between two groups and there's information, say out of the jail, that this is about to become more active because this person's being released and this is what they're saying, those are put into intelligence reports. FIOs are field interrogation and observation reports. So if I stop someone in the course of my duties and I talk to them about criminal activity, not that leads, sometimes it leads to an arrest, but generally not that it doesn't lead to an arrest, but someone calls and says, these kids are hanging out on my porch, I want them gone. The officers come, they'll take down their names, their particulars, and who's with who. Those are turned into FIOs, which are then given to our intelligence unit and put into a separate database.
And with those FIOs, Detective, and this would harken back not only to 2012, your time as a gang unit officer and detective, do detectives and officers, when they do FIOs, take note of if somebody's hanging around with a known gang member?
Yes, if the person is with someone who is a known gang member, that will be noted.
So even if they themselves are not necessarily in a gang, if they're with somebody in a gang, that will be noted?
Yeah, there's a box on the bottom typically gives the reason for the stop, and it may say, investigate person or loud party call. Officers document it in different ways. Some will put it in there like with known gang associates.
And in this particular case, was there any indication that one person in that car had even been seen or stopped or questioned in the presence of a gang member?
No.
Additionally, Detective, and again, calling your attention to the fact that the case was unsolved for months, did you investigate a potential drug angle?
There was no information that these kids were involved in drugs, period. It was looked at, and it was pretty much quickly discounted because there was just no information on it.
So no information of drug involvement, no information of gang involvement?
Correct.
So the tips that Mr. Baez brought up, were those investigated by you?
Yes, sir.
And what was your ultimate investigative conclusion as to whether or not anyone in that car had gang or drug involvement?
That they amounted to unfounded rumor.
Now you're asked a few questions.
How much longer will it be?
I believe about 10 minutes.
All right, let's take our lunch recess.